when people change so suddenly, it is because of possession. And why was she possessed? Because when she hit her head, her consciousness was lowered, and that left a gap for some negative energy, which was in the hospital already, to enter her body or her aura anyway.
Hello and welcome to Holistic Circle podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philip Kowald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And I'm very happy to have here the second time with me, Chris Earnshaw. Hello and welcome again, Chris. I am forcing you today in a Christmas conversation, all things. You have so many interesting ways to go and so much knowledge, and I'm making the best use of it to talk about Christmas.
Right.
But I think there's a deeper conversation that I'm dying to have, and you are the person I would love to have it with. It's about light and darkness, and it goes for all of us. In every culture, in every system that we know on Earth, there is an idea about, is it good or evil, light or dark, or the wheel of life, or there is everywhere, right? There is no culture that I'm aware of except some very early cultures, prehistoric cultures, that do not have that concept because they believe in the God, the mother God. They interestingly don't have concepts of good and evil. It's super interesting, but that's not our conversation today. So we've moved on to the era of man, and there obviously comes the war and comes all of it, and comes good and evil and light and darkness. That might be an interesting conversation for some other time, but today we talk about the here and now and duality as we see it and as we understand it and as we get inspired by it and as we struggle by it. And you have an unique vantage point to the subject because you have been working for years, as I understand, as an exorcist. You've been helping people. So we're starting our lovely Christmas conversation. Everybody's sitting with Christmas sweater and a hot mug, and they can learn a little bit about exorcism to lighten up the mood. Chris.
Excellent. So, what in particular do you want to know?
Everything, basically, how you
Everything.
started, or is it from a background? Who are the people? How they reach out? How you help them? Everything that you possibly comes to your mind. It's very unique.
I haven't prepared anything, so it's a little bit. So
start with the beginning.
I have a Christian cultural background, which means I was born into a Christian society, but I'm not a believer and I don't go to church. And so the way I approach exorcism is by using a pendulum. And I've got one here. I have many pendulums, but this is just one of many. And I learnt the technique, and I've got the book here, from a person called Raymond Grace. I don't know. He wrote, "The Future is Yours." And this is a book about, I would say it's a book for people who want to be advanced dowsers, people who use pendulums, but not just to make yes-no decisions. This book teaches how you can manipulate energy. And years ago, probably 30 years ago, living in Japan, I was attracted to the spiritual. I had some interesting experiences and I wanted to study spiritual things, but I didn't know where to go. I was reaching out to everything. For example, crystals. I was working with crystals and homeo, so many things. And
the club, Chris.
Yes. So I was searching, and in Japan, we don't have spiritual teachers like we have in the West, which I mean, in the West, we have people who have a track record. There's not really a qualification per se for spiritual work. but they're known by the work they do, and people recommend people to teach spiritual things based on their track record. In Japan, we don't have this. And if people who call themselves spiritual tend to be housewives with a side hobby of reading tarot cards or something. And often they're not very good at it.
Would be lovely. I learned in another podcast.
Yes, and I designed my own tarot cards, which I don't have here. It's called the Tarot of the Revelation.
We'll talk about
And
this later for super last minute Christmas shopping. I want to know about the tarot cards. We'll get there for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I started with the tarot because a friend of mine, we were talking about spiritual things, and he introduced me to a German tarot reader who was visiting Japan. And I went to a reading with him, which was really quite expensive, but I trusted my friend's recommendation. And the man blew me away. He was saying things that I had never told anybody. And he was looking at 5 or 6 cards on the table. I thought, where's he getting this information from, And so from there, I started studying the tarot, and I took an American examination, which in Japan, people are very focused on certifications. So I got the Master Tarot Reader certification from the USA and also from Britain. And then I decided, based on a coincidence, at the time I was studying Edgar Cayce, and Edgar Cayce did a book called The Commentary on the Book of Revelation. And when I read that, I saw the connection between tarot cards and the Book of Revelation, and then I made my own cards. Unfortunately, the cards are no longer available, but the book that explains the whole concept and why tarot cards come from the Bible, it's all explained in the book. From there, I started looking for other things.
Sorry, Chris, Old Testament or
Yeah.
New Testament?
The New Testament, the Book of Revelation. It's Genesis starts the book of the Old Testament, and Revelation finishes the New Testament. And what is very interesting is that Genesis and the book of Revelation are reflections of each other. There's similar stories in both books about opening the gates to the Garden of Eden, and in Revelation, it's closing the gates to the Garden of Eden. Anyway, it's a long story.
I'm having an electric shock therapy of being an altar boy I went to a private monastery boarding school. So I'm having an electric shock when you start talking.
Okay, so you don't have a heart attack. I think you should read the book by yourself. So anyway, from that point, I really got deep into spiritual things, and among many things, I chose to study the pendulum. And what I like about the pendulum is that it gives you a visual answer to your questions. And so you build up a relationship with a pendulum, and the more you use it, the better the questions get. It's quite a long period.
But this is getting very interesting now. I had a podcast yesterday with one of the leading world expert on dreams, how to connect with your dreams. And we mainly talk about the techniques that are applied, that you, through a process of learning, basically open up the channel. And I know that you and me are both big fans of energy meditations or working with energies and those things. And the funny thing is, when you talked about our dream, that you need to also tune into those energies, but for the purpose of the sight. Is it like the sight, like a medium, or the sight of reading your dreams almost like awake? It is a very interesting and technical conversation. And now you're giving me another one today with the pendulum. That's another way. So I'm starting to see through those podcasts I've been making, because I've always focused on meditation. That's my thing. And this is the way I go. And I didn't look much that there is the same tuning in, but with a different result and a different way. This is a very interesting thing that you said to me just right now. So you're tuning in and you talk to the pendulum and it talks to you.
Yes. And that's why I like it, because many other techniques, you don't get an answer. You can meditate and talk to the universe, but very difficult to get an answer that you can
Sorry,
actually
Uncle,
quantify.
I must break you one more time. Do you say that this is coming from your subconscious that is transferred to the pendulum, or is it an entity? How you see that? This is like your subconscious talking to you through the pendulum, like with dreams, or is it like an entity that really talks?
No, I'll explain in a moment, but it's actually an entity working through me to move the pendulum.
Wow.
Then I realized that by studying the tarot, and it's not just the tarot, but there are other practices, I had opened a kind of psychic door in my mind, and I was starting to hear voices and people talking to me, my family, my daughter talking to me, even though she lives in New York. I heard her talking to me. And I wasn't particularly trying to connect. I was just getting ready to go to bed, and somebody started talking to me. And then ghosts, it's hard to explain, but perhaps foreigners, Westerners would appreciate a ghost, but an apparition entered my bedroom one day and sat on my bed. And I couldn't see it, but I knew because the room got suddenly very cold and the bed dipped down. Now, I thought spirits and things had no body, or they couldn't make a dip in the bed, but they did. When it sat down, the mattress went down. And I wasn't very experienced, and I probably said the wrong things to the apparition. But anyway, as soon as it left, the room went warm again. These sort of things happened to me regularly after I was working with the Tarot of the Revelation.
This is a very important conversation that we're having right now, because yesterday the woman also said about those visions, but she was more or less convinced that it's our subconscious manifesting, and you think it's
No,
like a real entity. But this is here already starting our yin yang, black and white. We are already in duality because we have two very different schools of thinking. The ones that think everything is created from inside out, and the ones who actually believe in a super natural, I don't know how to use the right wording. Maybe you help me there. But this here is crucial, important reason why I'm doing the podcast, because that's the quest I'm on. I want the answer. And this is becoming the core theme of my podcast, to understanding light and darkness. Is it one or is it separated? Please, sorry, go on. I'm breaking you, very unpolite.
So, no, it's okay. So, having decided to work with the pendulum, then I was looking for some really interesting information. And I don't believe in coincidences. I believe that everything has a purpose in our lives. And I was driving home listening to a podcast. It wasn't a podcast in those days. It was a radio program that had been recorded. But anyway, it was Whitley Strieber. And Whitley Strieber is a person who's had UFO experiences, and he talks about it and introduces people. And he interviewed Raymond Grace, the author of this book. And so then I was listening on the radio. I was astounded by what he was telling me. Raymond Grace has a very interesting background. I think he's from West Virginia or one of the Appalachian countries. He has a very thick American accent, but he uses the pendulum to help heal people, to take arsenic out of wells. If you've got a poisoned well, he just gets rid of it. And his attitude is nobody told him he couldn't do it, so he just does it. And I'm not quite sure how I think it was working with a Ouija board or something. And so I decided to open a communication with whatever was on the other side, using a form of a Ouija, not a real Ouija board, but something like a Ouija board, which I'd written on paper. And I used a pendulum, to ask questions of whatever is moving my pendulum. You know, you don't have to move it, you just have to hold it and it'll start moving. So and the energy gets stronger and stronger. And after a minute, it can go all sorts of, I don't know if you can see. Yes, you can see. So I'm not actually shaking anything. It's just moving. And I was like you, I wanted to know why it was moving. So I asked the universe, and then I found that I had a sort of guardian angel had been appointed to me. And I asked the guardian angel's name and found it was a woman. And I asked about her background and all sorts of things. And so now, when I want to do something, I don't try and force the pendulum to do anything. I call upon my guardian angel, this woman, and I ask her to contact the appropriate energies in the other side to do the work I want to achieve.
So basically, here we are. I'm having the questions, you have the answers. And this is another duality that we're having here in this podcast today, the question mark and the exclamation mark. But it's wonderful because we are all on this journey, either at the beginning or at the end. So, but we are still both travelers. And in that sense, I'm happy not knowing the answer yet. So can we now a little bit move then towards exorcism? How then all of this, how was your first client, patients, whatever you call them?
Yeah.
So a little bit here, come to that one point where we then can move on to the next level.
Right. So Raymond Grace in his book tells you about exorcisms and what to do. It's really not difficult. I had a third book I wanted to show you, but I can't. This is by William Baldwin, and it's Healing Lost Souls. It's Baldwin's name's at the bottom.
Yes, I see. It's good.
Healing Lost Souls. And there was a third book, which is also extremely good, very similar. And so we set up a pattern with my guardian angel. And I asked, first of all, if it's okay for me to help somebody who is suffering. And they tend to be suffering from mental issues. For example, they can't sleep, they are irritable, they suddenly strike out, or they shout at people. I had a friend, a Polish friend, and she works in a Japanese company, and she tripped on the computer cable. It was just hadn't been taped down or something. It's just total liability. And she tripped on it, and she hit her head on one of the metal working tables off his desks. And the next thing she remembers was waking up in hospital. And she was in hospital for a couple of days. And when she came out, she was like a different person. She was always angry. And yeah, it's just totally light and day sort of situation. And so then I asked the universe through my guardian angel if it was okay to heal her. And the first step was to find out what was wrong with her. And we knew she had been possessed, and that is a given. When people change so suddenly, it is because of possession. And why was she possessed? Because when she hit her head, her consciousness was lowered, and that left a gap for some negative energy, which was in the hospital already, to enter her body, or her aura anyway.
I had to be clear all over again. You talk that this is a real thing. So you talk that energy is a living thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's very clarify this.
Yeah. So it's the soul of somebody who has died in a hospital and probably died in a rather miserable or condition, and he just hung around the hospital maybe 100 or 200 years. And then my friend went and he saw an opportunity, and he, she, it, whatever, took that opportunity. And so we knew it was possession, and we, meaning me and my guardian angel. And one of the things about the guardian angel I got to mention is that her background being Egyptian, her name doesn't have any vowels. And so I'm never quite sure about how to pronounce it because it's just, I think it's 9 consonants. And how do you pronounce that? And I've asked several times, and she said, "Oh, yeah, that's okay." Uh, I don't actually hear her talking to me, but the pendulum gives me the answer. And the pendulum doesn't just move in a north, south, east, west. You can make other points on the circle, for example, laughing, humor, joking. You could have a point like, say, 180 degrees and 0 is a up and down. But if you made it 190 degrees, that indicates she's laughing or it's a joke, that sort of thing. And so we have several points on this around the circle. If the pendulum moves there, then, for example, one of the points is, I can't answer that, please ask another question. Because some things are very sensitive, and even for the other side. First of all, I wanted to see how badly she was possessed. And basically, on this book and the second one I can't find, they divide the possession up into light possession, medium possession, and serious possession. And that indicates the level of negativity of the entity that has entered her aura. Do you know the author Michael Crichton? He wrote Jurassic Park, I think, the film Jurassic Park. Okay. So he's written a book called, he's a doctor and he writes best-selling novels and things, but Michael Crichton wrote a book called Travels. And he went to meet I'm not sure what it was. It was a person who taught him how to have an out-of-body experience. And this person was in San Francisco. He went and met him. And he also could see his own aura, and he could see the negative entity stuck on the aura, on the outside. In most people's cases, a low negativity and is rather like a cold or the flu. You just can't get rid of it. But it's not a serious thing. But if you have a severe level of possession, you need to clear that as soon as possible. And my friend, she didn't have a very severe, but she had. And what also happens is that it's often more than one entity enters your aura, sometimes 3 or 4. And it can be as much as 30 or 50. And you don't feel it because what you do feel is that you're always tired. These entities, they suck your energy a little bit at a time. There are different types of entities. For example, a classic one is for alcoholics. Alcoholics, they surrender their will, their body to the alcohol. And that's why we use in the word spirit. Alcohol's whiskey, the hard alcohol, we call it spirit. And in olden times, they believed there was a relationship between spirits and spirits. And in fact, there really is. Because what happens is that when a person loses consciousness because he's drunk, which is a serious thing, he could also hit his head as he falls. But if he becomes unconscious from drinking too much, that allows negative entities to enter his aura. And what they want is they want that buzz from the alcohol. When you have in a summer day and you have the first beer and it's hot to have, you're thirsty, the first beer, it feels so good. That's what the entities want. They want that buzz from the alcohol. And that's why they won't leave your aura. They stick on the aura. They can be there for years. And what the problem is, however much a person tries to get off alcohol, detox, or goes to the Betty Ford Center in Los Angeles, wherever it is, it'll only be a short-term recovery because until you have somebody exercise you and get those spirits out of you, they will be nudging you all the time for another drink, just one more drink, just one more drink. Only need the one, just one more drink. And some people can actually hear it. We call it like being delirious. People can hear voices. Those are the voices of the negative entities saying one more drink. And so they are stuck forever.
Yeah, I must now a little bit put this into smaller chapters because there's this like now mind-blowing information for a lot of people out there. This is gonna Merry Christmas, everyone, by the way. So let's a little bit put them into smaller chapters. And the first thing is, do I understand you correctly that these entities only come from a dead person? They don't come any other way. They are human related. This is the first thing.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So
yes.
when a person dies, is it that like when you have unfinished business or dramatic business, when you're basically not in peace and harmony and love, when you cannot dissolve into the light? I guess that's a concept that you and me most probably will agree on. Then you are somehow unfinished in any collect. You might stay here and continue the suffering. Is that so far I understood you correctly?
Yes. Yes.
Some of them are very old. Now I need to ask you a question. You said your guardian angel. Now I need to ask you, I'm so sorry. Is she one of those persons who did not dissolve into the light and stayed here for a very long time, like the other spirit, or where does she come from? How does her existence?
Right. So her background, she was a temple maiden in ancient Egypt, and she would work in the temple, but they also danced in the temple, danced to the gods, and they played music and things, entertainment. So that was her job. And a lot of the experience, Raymond Grace talks about the nuts and bolts of advanced pendulum work. But about spiritual things, I really recommend a book called 30 Years Among the Dead by Carl Wickland. This is a remarkable book. It was written over 100 years ago. The English is a little bit Victorian, but that's okay. In that, he explains the whole structure of the spiritual world and what seems to happen. So certain people who are atheists do not move into heaven. They end in a kind of bardo, which is a kind of dark path. In Buddhism, they call it the red path. And these entities who don't believe in heaven, when the light opened up in the skies when they died, they didn't enter that tunnel. They were either afraid or they just for some reason didn't make the decision to enter the tunnel. And they still died. Some can be earthbound, like the people in the hospital that attached to my friend. Many people, not just hospitals, but they also go to churches. If you go to just nearly any church, you will find negative entities, which are ghosts, phantoms, whatever. You can't see them, and it's impossible to talk to them, but they're there, and there may be a group of them. They're stuck because when they died, they were so fearful of going to heaven, they are going to hell, as the priest had told them, you're a sinner, you will go to hell. And they were so scared of that, they went to the church instead for protection.
First of all, it's very interesting. Just a little side note. A lot of French cathedrals have special patterns on the floors that does not allow spirits to enter. So there's like a lot of cathedrals who specifically built so the spirits cannot enter, or at least that's what is their intention is. Maybe it's not working, but it's
intention.
Is their original. And it's also interesting what you say, because I'm still try to understand. First of all, now the wording guardian angel is a little bit complex because she's actually human, who just decided she's not bad or evil, but she decided not to go for whatever reason in heaven, or the light, as most probably you and me rather call it. But now interestingly, because in Buddha or in Buddhism, we have those great monks who do reincarnation. So they're keeping their soul here to take the knowledge and then just take it to the next. So there seems to be a lot of different level on this other side, as you're saying it. There seems to be quite a complex thing going on. And as a funny little, I must make a stupid joke, I'm so sorry, it's a very serious subject, there's no other way, then basically we are surrounded by communists who are all atheists and have not found the way to, so the spiritual world is now overrun by Stalinists. But it's just a very bad joke.
No, but that's the situation. Carl Wickland described this kind of bardo as just thousands of people wandering around aimlessly. They don't know where they're going, and they can communicate with each other. So they're all arguing and complaining. They don't want for food, so none of the body functions make any are important, but they can still have a bodily shape. So even though they're ghosts, they can be identified by their faces and things. Then people who were not atheists but believed in God in whatever form they go straight into heaven. And heaven is exactly the same as we are here. They have houses, they have shops, but nobody eats food. There's no need to eat food. You don't drink anything. They work and they study with special spiritual masters about their previous lives, not just the last life when they died, but the previous lives, to see if they can make improvements and raise the quality of their spirit. They can go to lectures. Einstein's still giving lectures at universities in heaven and all sorts of, and it's, so among those people, there are some who are chosen who are of such a high purity of spirit. They are chosen to act as either two things. One is to help somebody on earth, and that's what the person I call a guardian angel. And the other one is to go into Bardo and try and bring people who are lost and bewildered, and all the agnostics, and try and bring them into heaven. And that's called the Band of Mercy. And these highly spiritual people, that's their job. They go in and they choose people who say, look, we've come from a better place. Wouldn't you like to come with us? And they try and negotiate or talk to them. And so that's where my spiritual guardian comes from, my guardian spirit, because of her background in being in a Egyptian temple and her deep spiritual faith. And probably she had other life experiences, because when I asked her, have you lived on earth? My pendulum nearly took off. It went this in a wild circle like that for about 5 minutes. It wouldn't stop. There was so much energy coming through. And so when I talked to her about Egypt and things, it was very interesting. Yes. So when you work with people who have been possessed, you want to get these negative entities out of them. What I do is I ask my guardian spirit to find what they call spirit doctors. These are on the other side, who are somewhere between guardian angels and angels. There's this thing called a spirit doctor. They come and they take the negative energy out of the person. They just rip them out. There's these negative energy entities are such low energy compared to the higher realms. There's just no conflict. They just ripped off the person. Yeah. And the person who was possessed suddenly feels all this new energy coming through them.
Right. I now need to ask you, because there's hundreds of different rituals on Earth throughout the ages where people thought that they can do that kind of work without that, as you said, they're a spiritual doctor, that all kind of rituals. I don't want to get started with the list.
Right.
Do you think that is all bollocks and it don't work without that super entity to do it for you, or there is some of the things that you consider might be working?
But yes, it is possible. But in the books I've read, first thing they said, you shouldn't be in the same room as the person who is possessed. You don't want the negative energy to come to you. When I ask the other side to take the negative energy away, I ask the spirit doctor, I don't use names or terminology, but I believe that's what they are. I ask them to take the entity to a higher dimension for re-education. That's the terminology I use. So many people talk about damned souls and sending them to hell. No, I don't think that's not the Christian way of doing things. We want these souls who are misguided, who, when they died, they got left behind and they saw an opportunity to get energy from somebody else. Oh, yeah, okay, I can understand that. And so I asked the other side to take to a higher dimension for re-education. And I think anybody can do it. I think, as you mentioned, anybody can do it. I don't have any special skills except I'm fairly proficient with the pendulum. But the thing is, if it's an ego trip, if you think you are doing it, I am the one with the power to say, get hence Satan. It won't work. I don't think it works very well. We saw in the film The Exorcist.
Sorry, Chris, this is so crucial. I must be a little bit persistent.
Yeah.
People need to understand because you know it. You've done it for years. You have so much insight.
Sorry,
People listening to the first time in their lives, they have now. So if you have a friend or somebody that you know that you think it has changed very rapidly at some point recently, whatever, and you see it's low down and constantly want to sleep, and I'm tired all the time. I'm tired all the time. So
Yes.
you suspect the person to have something stuck on the aura. And I can take this.
Yes.
It sounds very nice and harmless. And I can see to suck out energy. And I'm totally okay. That doesn't sound bad. What concretely, as an amateur who's not read all the books, there's no pendulum work. Let's say it's me and I suspect that my good friend has been suffering from it. Can I do anything to help or can I do nothing?
No, of course you can. And the first thing you do is to draw this semicircle and get a pendulum and then ask the universe, is my friend possessed? And then the pendulum never lies. If you get a strange answer, it's because your question is not accurate. You have a little bit what we call woolly questions, and you need to have a perfectly. And for example, when you say your friend, but where is your friend? There are many people who have the name Philippe Cobalt. So it's good to have their birthday, if possible, or where they live. And when you identify Cobalt in Leipzig, and if you can say that,
very
if
there.
you can get it really.
I'm in.
But if you could get it, because there's so many people with the same names. And so the spirit world, just because you're thinking about the person, they also need to have accurate information. But this is something I'm just Joe Blow. I don't have any special techniques. I learned this all from books. I had a teacher.
So with the circle,
it's just simple.
Just give us a little. So the circle, you write on one side yes and one side no.
No. So it's best when you nod and shake your head. That's how I do it. So the nodding is a vertical movement and shaking is no.
Logic here.
So east to west is no and north south. You only need a semicircle because the other side of the semicircle is a reflection of the first circle. If this points at 1 o'clock, then that's 7 o'clock on the other circle. It's the same thing.
Okay, so now let's say my friend, I do the circle with yes, no. Of course, I was stupid, not thinking about it like that. And the pendulum tells me yes, that the friend is possessed. And I ask if it's like light or if it's strong. And then I'll see the reaction. And then and then I need to ask the pendulum, please, could you ask someone to take away that bad spirit? Is that how it works?
You could do that. Yes. I find it easier to work with somebody I know. This is a good opportunity to get to know your guardian spirit. There's somebody for everybody in the world. There is somebody there for you. And you just write A to Z on the pendulum. It takes a lot of time because what's the second letter of your name? What's the 8th letter of your name? And just ask, may I have your name, please? It's best to be polite because we really don't know much about this, but this person will facilitate your advanced techniques with a pendulum because my guardian angel is part of the spiritual world and has access to much more. And if I can give a little story here about how to use a pendulum and dowsing, I was very concerned about a young junior high school girl who's about 13 or 14. She had been kidnapped. And unfortunately, it isn't that rare in Japan. It happens. Anyway, so I thought I could use my new dowsing skills to find where she was. And I realized that, okay, I had an idea where she might be because I used a map and I used a map of Tokyo and I got this and I found a point. But you can't knock on people's doors and say, have you kidnapped this young girl? And they would call the police. And you can't go to the police because they think you're crazy and they put you in hospital. So then it came to me, I should ask an archangel, the highest power there is in the universe, to sort this out. And that's what I did. And when you're working with angels, their function is to help humanity. That's their function. You shouldn't feel obliged, or I'm not quite sure exactly what the word is, but I think the church has taught us incorrectly about angels, that they are mysterious beings, etc. You can talk to Archangel Michael and other people can talk to him at the same time. He's just like the description of God, that he is, what's it, omnipresent and
Seeing, knowing,
omnipowerful.
and so forth.
Yes, omniscient, omnipowerful, omnipresent.
Yes.
That's the same for the angels. So you don't think I'm tying up his time or he's got something more important to do in Gaza or in Ukraine. He can help you anytime. I wasn't sure about that, but anyway. And the other thing is that all angels tend to have their own color.
All right.
And so I bought a book of angels and looked at it and found they're all colors. And Michael has a bright blue color. So I asked my angel, a guardian angel, could you ask Michael to do this for me, please? And give him my best gratitude and love and everything. And when I was doing it, the energy in my room was just fantastic. It was just heavy at the same time. It was sparkling. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it. It was like being in a bubble bath suddenly. It just suddenly changed. And about a week later, I saw on television that the girl had escaped from the captive's house and she had walked into a police station. And before that, I jumped a step. So when I asked for Michael's help, I also asked, could you send me a sign that you have heard my request? Please. Don't forget the please. And because his color is blue, I was waiting for something blue. And I think it was 2 days after I did the dowsing, I left my house and I have a small garden and there's a garden gate. And there was a dragonfly sitting on the gate, bright blue. The wings were blue, the head and body were all bright blue. And as I approached the gate, I suddenly saw it, but it didn't fly away. And I could feel that it was looking at me and thinking, have you seen me? Do you recognize me? And I just got that into my heart. I walked very closely to the gate, opened the gate, and then it flew off. So it wanted me to recognize it with being a sign from Archangel Michael that my request had been received. And that was such a great feeling for myself of, even I can achieve it. And then 3-4 days later on television, the girl walks into a police station. The work is done. So the important thing, I think, is to not get involved in an ego trip. I don't really tell people the things I do because it sounds like I'm a sort of, I don't know, Merlin the magician or something. No, it's actually anybody can do this and it's very exciting work. There's many other things I've learned since then. But the thing is to be modest and humble. We're part of a wonderful universe. I say to my students, life is wonderful. And what I mean is it is full of wonders. Wonderful means it's full of wonder. And I'm seeing this every day with the simple things that I do in my study in Tokyo.
Thank you. We agreed on 50 minutes and unfortunately we are running out of time. But I think we could talk another 10 hours because if this is a real thing that you're opening up to us, and I have huge trust into you and your knowledge, then there's so many consequences spinning around what you just told, because this would be really a
if I
whole
can
new
give you
ball game.
one more sort of Christmassy thing you wanted to talk about. Oh, I'm not a Christian, and when people say Christmas, I always reply with "Bah humbug," which is from
Oh
Charles Dickens.
no, no.
Charles Dickens. But it's all made up stories and misunderstood myths and practices, and it's for the children. And I'm no longer a child, so give me a bottle of whiskey, I'm happy. No, the thing is that all spirits live on a spectrum. And so there's a light spectrum, there's a dark spectrum, and the energy levels are very different. So when we look at the spectrum of light, it goes from infrared to ultraviolet. Is that right? Yes, ultraviolet. And all in between, you've got the reds and the yellows, the greens, the purples, etc. That's 1 inch wide. But for a meter on the other side, there are thousands of other energies. And these vibrations, the angels are at the highest vibration, and the negative energy are the lower vibration. They're lower than our vibrations. That's why we can see the light. They're lower than that vibration. So when they get stuck on our aura, trying to take our energy from us, we can get rid of them easily. It's not a big, difficult thing, but it's just you have to think it through. I always ask a higher power to do it for me, because I want those negative energies to be taken to a higher dimension, to be re-educated. I don't want to punish them. They just don't understand what their world's about. And this is explained so well in Carl Wickland's book, 30 Years Among the Dead. And you can get the book for $2 as an ebook. It's so cheap. It's an old book. So, yes, I like to think there's compassion. This is what we're helping people, but I want to be compassionate with these negative energies. They're lost souls, they're uneducated, but they're in the dark part of the universe. And then there's the light part of the universe, and that's all the angels and the happy stories. So for Christmas, let's focus on the light and the happy stuff.
Well, first of all, I've decided to forever stay a little bit child once a year. And the series end of November, I open up the gate, and somewhere in the middle of January, I'm closing it back down. But you can do all the crazy stuff. I have a pink Christmas tree this year, by the way. It's a real Christmas tree with pink balls. I'm all out when it comes to Christmas, do a sweater and everything. Once a year, it's cleansing. It's my spiritual cleansing. I don't know if it works or it takes spirits. If I have them, I don't know. But if I have them, I believe a pink tree will do the trick in my case. But
well, that will help with your own energy, but you won't get rid of negative energy stuck in your aura. It doesn't. They're like limpets or those insects that stick on dogs and cats. They got teeth.
Sticks or whatever they're called.
Yeah. I forget what they're called, but they don't leave very easily, and it can be a little bit complicated. And the second thing, you also want to do a second reading, asking your guardian angel after the work has been done to see how well the work has been done. Sometimes only the really serious ones get taken away first. And still there's some small ones that they're just a nuisance. They're not seriously affecting anybody's energy levels. They're like onlookers, followers, or something like that.
One last time I ask you, this can only be taken away by spirits. We as a human, you and me together, we cannot cleanse them. Only spirits can cleanse them. We are absolutely clear on this information.
It's so difficult. If you are a very spiritual person, I think you can do it by yourself.
That's another subject.
As I mentioned before, if you saw, I didn't finish this conversation, but the film The Exorcist, which is a real story, they had 4 priests trying to exorcise a kid in bed. And the kid had been possessed by a very high, very powerful negative being. It entered his body, and he was shouting abuse at the clergy in Latin. And it took them over a month to clear that thing. And you could see they're exhausted. Every day they're around the bed and they're saying prayers. But that took a month because it's not really effectual. If you really want to be effectual, you have to ask the spirit world, and the spirit world just sends an angel down, thump, it's just gone.
I always thought the way I understood that the Catholic exorcism is that they're actually praying for entities to come and do it for them. I always thought that's their exorcism actually supposed to work. And secondly,
Yes, maybe.
they don't follow your guidance because they're in the same room, but
That's
they're
right.
wearing priest clothes, so they maybe are protected. And also sometimes they draw symbols on the floor, like the churches again, but you would doubt that they are actually effective. So
The devil just makes fun of all the prayers and the crosses and the holy water. The devil just laughs at
that's
it.
not a Christmas message. Oh no!
Oh, sorry. Okay. But that's the film, okay? That's the film, The Exorcist.
No, it works.
But-
It works.
So no, the thing is that we are very powerful beings, and we have taken that power. The church has taken that power from us by saying, no, it's only the Vatican that can exorcise people. And the Vatican has a school of exorcists, and they dispatch these exorcists all around the world. The thing, I saw a newspaper article saying that the situation in New York is so bad that the Archdiocese of New York asked the Vatican to send 14 more exorcists to help because there's so much work needed to be done.
Yes.
And I understand that if people are turning to drugs and cocaine and they're always drunk, and they're going to get, if you're not careful, you will get possessed.
I'm taking this
And if you hang around with possessed people, it's just one to the other. It's like a cold; it moves from one to the other.
Yes.
I worked with a mother, and she was seriously mentally challenged, but I was able to ask for help, and we cleared all her negativity. But they came back to her within about 2 weeks, and then I realized, thinking about it, the child also, her 5-year-old child, was also possessed. The child was playing up sometimes and shouting and screaming, and the child was passing the energy back to his mother, and the mother was just. So it's like getting the cold. You got to heal the whole family.
Well,
That was a learning experience.
I'm taking it very serious what you said, but I had to keep a light message at the end. But
Yes, sure.
I think that there's a whole parallel world. And as you said, there are hundreds of Catholic licensed exorcists, and it's been here since human mankind. We do exorcism for all cultures, for all things. It's impossible that they're all crazy. But we are just so stuck into this new world where so much is invisible to us and so much has been discarded and rejected. And this is a heavy line to cross for a lot of people listening to this the first time in their entire life, except in the movie, right? These people will just don't know, are we nuts or what to do with this and how to do with it? But I think you laid it out in such a calm and beautiful way. Yes, because you made it very much less scary. You so much.
The thing is, you have the power. You really have the power to do nearly anything you want to in this world on the other side, but you just have to claim that power. You have to read books. You have to study it. The church is not going to tell you because they have taken that power from us in the medieval times, and they kept the power, and they themselves have forgotten it. If you talk to most Catholic priests about the devil, he says devil doesn't exist. No, I'm sorry about that.
I'm so with you on that part, but that's another podcast, and I think Derek could agree even more than today. But this was amazing. I think this was the best possible Christmas message ever. First of all, that we are in control, guide us, and there's so much help and so much reaching out. If we would just be willing to accept it, to open ourselves and take responsibility, then it all would be there on a silver platter. So if that's not a Christmas message, then I don't know what is. And with this,
the angels are there to help us, but we don't ask for their help.
Pink treat. So I will see them with new eyes. And I'll say thank you so much. This was a very important podcast for me. It clarified a lot, and even a lot of things have not been said. They were there in the room in between, and it's food for thought if they stay. And I think you have blown a lot of people's mind today, Chris. Thank you
We
very
could
much.
continue the story. We can continue the story in the coming weeks.
You know how much.
But I'd like to finish by saying, Happy Pagan Tree Festival to you.
Thank you. Thank you so
You're
much.
welcome.